Good morning, viewer. Good morning, good morning. Well, yes, I just thought I'd go back to what I said I was going to before. Is going back to all the stories that I used to read in the Bible and used to think, that doesn't make much sense. So we're going to deal with one of those stories today. And it's quite a famous story if you are a Bible student. Actually, most people, this is quite ironic, isn't it? But most people who are a lover of that guy in heaven don't really know this story, particularly well because it's so significantly small in the Bible. Yet if you think about it, when it comes to having this relationship with God, so you can't just sort of Jehovah's Witness bash people who want a relationship with God, because as we know, there's millions of people all over the world who worship this God, the God of the Bible, and they want to have a relationship with him and think he's all sorts of lovely things because he tells us how lovely he is. So when it comes to trying to learn more about this God, which millions of people around the world worship and have worshipped for thousands of years, there's no real point going to the Greek scriptures, because that doesn't deal with God. It deals with the Son of God, Jesus Christ, on the earth. Whether you want to imagine that he is God incarnate on the earth, I don't really know. But recently, really the Christian Greek scriptures really deals with only 3.5 years of Jesus' ministry, and then it deals with the ministry of other guys after that, and that really odd book at the end called Revelation, which is it's like it was written on somebody who was on magic mushrooms. So for us to get a real true understanding of what this God is all about, when we take Jesus out of the equation, which you have to when we try to understand the God who has always been and shall always be, we're able to examine, going to the Hebrew scriptures, we're able to examine 3,500 years of man's dealings with God and God's dealings with man. That's when we get a full flavour, a full idea of what this God is all about. So we're going to be dealing with one of the stories in the Bible, and it deals with this guy called Elisha, who was a prophet of God. So we're going to deal with Elisha, and it's the famous story of Elisha and the bears, the baldy head, and the 42 children. So it's so small, we'll just crack on with it. So basically, and I've got various versions of it. I think I haven't got the New World Translation version of what happens here, but I'll go through it all. But basically, it goes something like this. Elisha left Jericho and went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, a group of boys from the town began mocking and making for him. "Go away, baldy," they chanted. "Go away, baldy." So the long and short of it is here. Hold on, I just need to take this call. And I'm back. So anyway, that's the crux of it. Other versions of this say this is what the children said themselves. So we've got "Get out of here, baldy." We've got "Go away, baldy." "Go up, you bald head." "Go up, thou bald head." "Go up, baldy." "Go up, baldy." "Go away, baldy." "Get out of here." "Get out of here, baldy." "Go up, baldy." "Go up, baldy." Get on up, baldy. "Get on up, baldy." "Go away, baldy." "Go away, baldy." Or "Piss off, you slapheads." Sorry, that's just me. So basically, that's the long and short of it. So basically, I think the New World Translation, if Jehovah's Witness, I think it says "Go on up, you bald head," which, who says "go on"? It doesn't even make any sense. So it's only when you look at other versions of the Bible that it makes a little bit more sense. So when they actually say here, "Go away, baldy, get out of here," seems to be something more that we can understand. So in other words, so it's God's prophet is walking, it says they came out of the town, so I don't even know which town this is. So basically, he's on his way from Jericho to Bethel, looks like, and boys from the town, I don't know if it's the town of Bethel, came out and basically just told him, they just took the mickey with the fact that he had a baldy head and told him to get out of here. So that's it, And as we all know, children do that. Children are, absolutely notorious for saying things that they shouldn't. How many times, if you have children or have had children, will they embarrass you by pointing at the man who has a hump or has only got one leg? or the really, really fat person, you know, and this is what they do, and they shout it out quite loud, all very innocently, but they do poke fun, or no, not knowing what they're doing. They do it because they're only children, and they don't really think about what they're doing, or the you know, the reaction that they're going to get. It's the first thing that they do, you know, it's what they do. That's what they do, because they are children, and they don't know any better. So quite often children will do that. They'll actually point, and parents will push their hands down and says, put your hands down, keep your voice down, because they've just, Mom, look at that man over there. This is what children do, because the children. So of course Elisha, who's a prophet of God, just of course ignored the fact that these children were calling him cotton onto the fact that he was that he was a baldy, that he was losing his hair. You know, he ignored them and says, oh, those kids are all off on it. And it just, of course, because Elisha, in the mode of his own God, just forgave them obviously, and never took offence, and showed love, and he was slow to mercy, and basically Elisha just went on his way. Of course, that's what happened, and we move on to the next verse. Of course, that sadly never happened. So instead of Elisha turning the other cheek in biblical fashion, turning the other cheek, you know, from this side to this side, you know, this is what he's supposed to do, but he didn't. You know, they made fun of him with his baldy head, and he took great offence at this. So the next verse says, verse 24, by the way, I'm reading from 2 Kings 2:23, so on to 2 Kings 2:24 now. And so next thing is, he obviously hears these kids shouting out, "Going up, but you bald head," and he turns round and looks at the kids, because verse 24 says, then he turned around, looked at them. So he turned around and thought, what the? Oh, it's kids. It's a bunch of kids over there. Oh, you kids. So he turned around and so he turns around and he calls down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. So we don't know what this curse was, but obviously he had the power, and with the permission of the Lord God, he obviously he said something. He cursed them in the name of the Lord. Oh, must take this call. Back again. So he says that he cursed them in the name of the Lord. So we don't know what he says, but obviously, damn you kids, in the name of Jehovah, damn you kids. And the next thing is that suddenly two female bears, I don't know why the female, it's, sort of gender specific here, a bit odd. Suddenly two female bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the young men. 42. So basically, it's quite simple. He's walking along, 42 kids come out. They either recognise he's the prophet of God. We don't really know at this point. Well, maybe they do, and maybe they're not of that particular faith. They don't mock his God. They don't mock his God. They don't mock Elisha's God, even if it was their God. They don't mock his God. All they shout is "Get out of here, you baldy!" So they just really tell him to just go away and recognise the fact that he is a slaphead. He then takes great offence, he curses them on the name of his God. Two female bears come out of the middle of nowhere. It was handy that they were local, handy that they were just two bears. What were those bears doing anyway? How many times you get bears mentioned in the Bible? So there were two bears just there, who then came out and sadly killed 42 children, mauled them, ripped them to pieces. In other words, ripped them to pieces and killed them. And the next verse just goes on. When you crack on to the next verse, that's it. There's no. else to this story. There's nothing like, then he felt remorseful, then he felt lost, then the parents came out, there was nothing. Literally, they came out, going up you, Baldy. He turns around, he curses them instantaneously. Two magical she-bears come out of nowhere and mauls these children to death. And he just carries on his way. And that's the story in the Bible. So anyway, we'll just burn that later. So that's the story in the Bible. Now the thing about it is, for Jehovah's Witnesses or anybody else who would read that scripture, I think Jehovah's Witnesses put a spin on it to not, instead of seeing what really happened here, you have to go, well, they were disrespectful to one of Jehovah's prophets and they were deserved of death. And you justify that's all well and good. And the reason why it's so easily justified is because, number one, we don't know the children's names. Number two, we don't have pictures of their faces. And number three, we don't know the children involved. We haven't got to know them. Now, for us then, so, this is how we can disconnect from this whole episode. This is how we can just read this verse without having any proper human feeling that we would have. We don't really feel sorry for these guys because they are nameless, faceless individuals. Just 42 children who mocked Jehovah's prophet and died. And clearly they were deserving it because we can't excuse it any other way. So, the only way we can properly get a real understanding of what really happened is that we have to make it more personal. And it's funny if you think about it because, quite often we will watch a film dealing with fictional people. We engage with these characters, it's a brand new film, we don't know who these people are, we start watching them, and it may not even be an actor that we know playing a role, but by the end of the film, when the actor dies, or there's a terrible loss or something happens in it, it can absolutely affect us emotionally and physically. We can actually start to well up and tears coming down, and if you're a man, you're trying to man up here. You're not trying to show that you have been emotionally affected by what you've been watching, even though these aren't even real people, even though they are just actors acting on a story which may not even be based on real events. It may be just come out of an author's head or a film director's head or a producer's head, and off you go. And we can watch for an hour and a half, and at the bit we can be really get engaged with these people. We can see the physical appearance. We can, if they act it well, we can feel their pain, and if the end of the film they die, we can feel the loss of the people who, during the film, we got to know who were associated with them or loved them. And these are people who don't exist. Yet you can read a scripture in the Bible which relates to 42 children dying, and we can have no emotional response at all because of the reasons I've already stated. So for us to get a proper emotional response to this event, we have to then bring it up to date and then put ourselves, we should always do this with the Bible. Whenever we read anything in the Bible relating to things like this, we should always put ourselves in the place of the people who were directly affected, or even the individuals themselves. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring this bang up to date and try to think of somebody within, well, you can pick any religious organisation which has faith in the Bible and believes the Bible is true. We're going to go for Jehovah's Witnesses because we've just picked a lead in Jehovah's Witnesses. So we'll go for a lead in Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's talk Tony Typepan Morris. Yes, let's talk about him because he is our favourite governing body member. Let's talk about him. So the scenario is, here's a scenario, is that a mother is out in the local shopping mall, or one of these outdoor big centres where there's lots of groups of retail park, a retail park or a shopping mall. She's out there with her 3 young children. And they are Jehovah's Witnesses, and the 3 children are cheeky chaps, cheeky wee lads. And as they're walking along, they spot Tony Morris. And Tony Morris is out doing the booze run. He's going out to his local liquor store to do the booze run for all the rest of the governing body members that morning. So he's doing the booze run. And they recognise him, even though he's sort of disguised with his little cheeky, with his peaky blinder cap. They recognise him straight away. And because they are children and have maybe watched the video thanks to Lloyd Evans on his John Cedar channel, they recognise that Tony is going out to buy some very expensive single malt whiskey Scotch whiskey. So as they're going past, they shout to Tony, "Going up, you pissheads," right? "Going up, you pisshead," because you see, bald head pisshead. I think he is losing his hair, so it could be joints. And so they go. So the 3 of them go, "Going up, you pisshead." Glug 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 glug. You know, just for a laugh, because they're just cheeky wee kids who've watched this video. They've probably watched it. It's Brother Morris. Look all that booze. So they're doing that. You know, they're expecting that Tony's going to turn around and go, "Oh, you guys." So that's what they're expecting to happen. But we have to think about it. Let's just think about it. Let's just compare Elisha with Tony Morris. So Elisha was God's prophet, and he's obviously dead, and he's been dead for a long time. Tony Morris is slightly different. That he believes that during the Great Tribulation that he'll be taken up to heaven and will join Jesus Christ, and will then be personally involved in the spectacular slaughter at Armageddon on the earth. And afterwards he will rule with Jesus Christ in the heaven and rule this earth, and then we're maybe responsible in bringing back some of these old prophets from the Bible, resurrecting back to the earth. So when it comes to being offending one of God's servants, Tony Morris trumps any of God's prophets every single time. So the fact that these kids shouted out, "Going up, you pisshead," it's more offensive. So this is the way this plays out. So next thing is, Tony turns around, sees his kids, and then he, instead of just laughing out or joking with them, he then looks at them, and then he curses them with God's name. He says, curse you children, I hope you die a horrible death within the next 120 seconds. Then magically, out of nowhere, out come a pack of feral dogs. They just come out, stray dogs. You get a lot of them in cities. They all band together, and they just come out in the middle of nowhere. And next thing is the bigger dogs knock down the children, so the children are on the floor. And then the dogs start biting. Literally, they put their teeth in their arms and they're pulling away, and the dogs are actually pulling out flesh. They're pulling out flesh from these children's arms. They're actually tearing the clothes off them. They're getting in at the back of the neck. They're pulling out chunks of ear, chunks of cheek. They're pulling out, the teeth straight on the eye. The eye comes out. The calves, back of the legs. They're just tearing these children apart. And the children, are holding their faces like this, and their fingers are getting torn away from their hands. And this goes on, it's a violent, very violent act. And the 3 children on the floor screaming. The mother can't do anything about this. Tony Morris is watching prior to doing the booze run. Tony's watching this going on. And eventually the dogs manage to get right into the children's throat, and they just straight away bite at the throat, tear this part out of the flesh wound, and of course the blood just flies out and the children die within seconds. A absolutely horrific, horrible death. Anybody watching that would be devastated, especially if the three boys who just been killed, cold-blooded, murdered, they'd been killed, had been their children. So of course, you know, the mother of the three kids sees this happening. Her children are now dead on the floor. The dogs are scarpered with bits of her children in their mouth. Blood, you know, children's blood, trail of blood going away, and all the dog's noses are covered in her children's blood. So of course she looked at Tony Morris and said, "Tony, I'm really sorry about that. That they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have made fun of you in that way. That video was ridiculous. Fancy getting that posted online. They shouldn't have done that. I tell you what, you get on with your the shopping in the liquor store, you know, and I'll just get a mop and bucket. I'll just get a mop and bucket here. I'll just wipe up this mess because there's blood going all over all over the pavement, or the boardwalk as they say over there. It's going all over there, you know, and I'll just get a mop and get it up, and you get on. I'm really sorry about that. I totally apologise about that. And yeah, carry on. Look forward to seeing you on the next jw.org broadcast, okay. And that's the way the story ended. That's obviously the way the story ended. Well, obviously, realistically, when we're dealing with realism here, and Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, their videos clearly don't. Realistically, what would really happen is that the mother would be screaming. She'd be trying to get into the children. The dogs would be attacking her as well if she was watching it. And if Tony Morris, if she realised that Tony Morris had cursed her children because they made fun of the fact that he was going in to get the booze in, that after her children were done for, you know, she would have been shouting to Tony Morris, "You cold-hearted killer. You murderer, you murdered my children just because they made fun of you, and they are children, they don't know what they're saying." And then she'd be cursing this God, she'd be cursing her loving God and say, "God, how could you do this? How could a loving God do this? How could this man here invoke your name to kill my children?" And she'd be heartbroken, she'd never get over it. That's a reality. And when we read the Bible, that's what we should do. We should read the Bible when we see cases of people that get put to death, or family members get put to death for no reason at all. Well, especially when it's colossal figures. We need to put ourselves there. So then we get a better understanding as how would we feel if we were there, or how would we feel if this happened in this day and age. Then we get a true understanding of where we are with our relationship with the author of the Bible, for this God of the Bible. And I've said this, and I've said this time and time and time and time again, I do not understand, especially with Jehovah's Witnesses, because at least the good thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is while they're in their organisation, they do get to read the Bible more than once. So they become more knowledgeable about the Bible's contents and the stories than yet everyday Christian. Most people that go out there, they love the God, they love the Jesus. If you ask them anything about the Bible, who do they know? Adam and Eve, yeah. Moses, Noah, the guy with the long hair, or Jesus. This is their knowledge of the Bible. It's so significantly small that you can't really see that they've really got to know the God. Jehovah's Witnesses, on the other hand, have no excuses. And if you come out of Jehovah's Witnesses, you really do not have any excuses. And when you come out of Jehovah's Witnesses, you should be more knowledgeable than most people that you know about what the Bible really says about God. So when we read things like this, when we read the fact that 42 children were massacred, were torn apart, just because they made fun of God's prophet, because they were just stupid, daft children. At the end of the day we can't excuse what happened to those children, especially if we put it into modern context and imagine that's our children. We can't excuse that. So how is it that Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, still come out of the organisation, still loving the Bible? still loving this God and praying to this God and saying, yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses never got it right, but I've still got a relationship with God and I still love me Jesus and I still pray every night and I still hope that I now realise I'm going to heaven with him. Do you really want to spend all eternity with somebody like that? Who just kills people, children, animals? It doesn't matter to him, you know. It's just fair game to him, fair game, just boom, and this is what happens. So anyway, that's the story of Elisha, the bald head, the 42 children, and the 2 she-bears. And if you think what happened there can be excused, can be, somehow that what happened is justified, well, honestly, look in the mirror and have a serious word with yourself, because there's something very, very wrong. Anyway, that's that story, and we'll crack on with another story another time. Anyway, enjoy your day. Bye.